welcome to the NBA Minutes to Win It podcast. I'm Big Italy 42. He's Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. Talking about tonight's huge slate, so we'll try to keep each player kind of short and sweet for you. Each position, 12-game slate, big-time prize pools everywhere, so definitely one that you want to be able to diversify your lineups. And best thing about tonight is there's not a lot of obvious plays, not a lot of just plays where you see everyone on the same player, so going to be a lot of fun, diverse lineups tonight as we all try to take down those big prizes. So starting off at point guard, we'll go through all the injuries and things like that first. Point guard injuries, Marcus Smart obviously out, Jared Bayless still out, Grievous Vasquez is out. Tyler Johnson is out. Really nothing significant that's just happened. All these guys have already been out, aside from Tyler Johnson, but he's not a very relevant player anyway. So we'll just run through all of our favorite plays. Obviously, starting off with Steph Curry. Had an enormous game against this team last time out. Played 31 minutes, 58 FanDuel, 66 DraftKings points. He was unreal in that game. Obviously, over 11,000 now. Russell Westbrook type price on FanDuel. Close to 11,000 on DraftKings, but there's plenty of value on a 12-game slate. So if you want to pay for a guy like Curry, it's not hard to do. And 251 points in this game, first time these two teams met, and it wasn't even that close. So if the Suns can keep this one close, then the sky is literally the limit for Curry tonight.
Yeah, I think this is obviously the favorable game for fantasy production, just because both these teams play at an insanely high pace of play. So, fantasy production, even if guys see around 30 minutes, which Curry did last time and still put up over 60, it could be the case again tonight. He's obviously a guy, probably the best superstar you want to pay up for tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Son's not good against point guards. He's the best one in the world. It's an easy decision for me if I'm paying up. But there are other options here. Of course, you got Russell Westbrook against Portland. He's a nice contrarian, like you mentioned in the GBP article. He's a nice contrarian option off of that if you want to kind of swerve away from Curry, who's, you would imagine, as far as the expensive point guards go, he's going to be the most popular one for sure.
Yeah, I like Westbrook. He's definitely going to be lower owned than Curry, and I think, obviously they have a similar floor and upside, so you're kind of getting the same type of play.
Yeah, a guy that I really like here also has really significant home and road splits, like Drew Brees types home road splits. You look at his DraftKings points, he's averaging 30 DraftKings points a game on the road and 42 at home. Reggie Jackson, he's a guy with monster upside. I know you were on him when he played Phoenix, put up 60, had 55 in his last game. This is a guy with monster upside. He's done a really good job of taking care of the ball. For a guy with usage rate around 30%, he's had, his last game he had 4 turnovers, but outside of that, no more than 3 in any game in his last 10. So not only is he a high upside guy, but he's a high floor guy, and I think he's one of my favorite mid-tier guys tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Whenever you get Reggie Jackson in the right matchup, he has an upside that's really tremendous and kind of overlooked. And those home and road splits are pretty crazy. He's shooting 48% at home and just 39% on the road. So he's at home tonight against Boston, who's been a really good defense this season, but getting a matchup against Isaiah Thomas, he definitely has the advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a couple other guys, both the New Orleans guys in play for me, Drew Holiday, Tyreek Evans. Tyreek Evans, of course, shooting guard on DraftKings. Both those guys are decent options. Anybody else that you like here tonight?
Not really. I'm probably going to be paying up. I guess Chris Paul you could throw in there, sitting at 7,900 on DK. Had a really great game against Milwaukee earlier this season. He's probably just a GPP play.
Yeah, I like that. Moving to shooting guard, which is not a good position tonight. Big injury news here, of course. Still Brad Beal out. Not looking good at him returning. Dwayne Wade missed shoot around today. Questionable for tonight. So hopefully we're not back to the Dwayne GTD Wade days where we just never really know if he's going to sit. But definitely a guy that you need to monitor his situation because guys like Chris Bosh could get a nice big bump there. Another thing that's interesting is we heard that Minnesota may be moving around their rotations here. A guy who played well last night, has been playing well recently, is Zach LaVine. 25 minutes last game, 34 FanDuel points. 26 minutes the game before, 33 FanDuel points. The guy's playing very well. We're hearing that maybe there's speculation. It was on Roto World today talking about maybe a mix-up. We've heard this from many teams, though. So Kevin Martin, maybe he's headed back to the bench, and maybe we see Zach LaVine get some more minutes. But he's certainly a fun GPP play tonight. Yeah,
definitely. It just seems like everyone on Minnesota is a GPP play just because I feel like they've been running 18 players. Like they have an 18-player rotation. It's just, you can't figure it out right now.
Yeah, it's a very, very deep rotation. Other guys to consider at shooting guard, I mean, you're going to want to try to find some value where you can. So there's not a whole lot of it down cheap. One guy's been playing really well, Alan Crabbe, 29, 27, 28, 34 minutes his last 4 games. Been right around 18 to 25 fantasy points each of those games. Obviously facing an OKC team that's playing well, but at the same time, OKC's a pretty big favorite in this one as well. So if this one gets out of hand, you might see some extra garbage time for him. But either way, he should be locked in the mid-20s and be a decent value for you.
Yeah, and we talked about him a few days ago and how good he was shooting, and that wasn't the case the other night when he shot 2 at 9, but still had 25 fantasy points because he had 2 steals, went 7, 5, and 5. So maybe not as scoring dependent as we thought. So
yeah, I mean he's definitely a guy that's producing, and he's got an awesome haircut, like Odell Beckham style haircut. So definitely a fun guy to watch for a lot of reasons. Elsewhere at shooting guard, I mean, Eric Bledsoe, we talked about him on the Market Advantage podcast. Really expensive on FanDuel, 9,200, but 84 on DraftKings, especially with the potential for double-doubles. We've seen him put up some monster lines. If Phoenix is going to have a chance in this game, a guy like Eric Bledsoe is going to have to step up and have one of those 23, 10, and 8 type of lines that he's capable of.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, but much more in play on DK like we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving over here to small forward, Paul George was the big concern this morning. He was sick, but did participate in shoot-around tonight. You assume that he's going to be fine, but at the same time, this might be a nice spot to target a guy like Paul George, because coming off of 2 subpar games where 22 and 22 FanDuel points, his price was at 10K or above, now creeped down, now only 9,400 on FanDuel. So you know the people on Twitter, you could tell who's on and who's off because they see Paul George, you're dead to me, some other choice words, never going to play you again, you idiot, all these things. And, I mean, he's still one of the top players in the NBA, struggled in a couple games, but this might be, on a 12-game slate, a nice spot to play him as a contrarian play.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, just because small forward's pretty top-heavy, and you got to look at Durant and Kawhi as kind of the real obvious options, I guess you could say, matchup-wise. But George, I really like him tonight.
Yeah, and a couple nice mid-range values as well. I know we both like Nick Batum. Yeah. He's been a consistent just about – you can pretty much lock him in, get your 30-plus fantasy points and move on. Gordon Hayward coming off of a bad game, but it was against Kawhi Leonard. The team just got absolutely slaughtered in that game. He should be in line for a nice bounce-back game against New Orleans. So both those guys in play. We've seen Otto Porter been playing really well without Brad Beal, also coming off of a poor game against Memphis. So nice, a lot of recency bias might come into effect, especially here at small forward tonight. So these are some guys that I'll definitely be throwing in. But the obvious value still being Matt Barnes, who's just only 18 shots taken in the last 2 games, but huge performances in both. I mean, he's just having like a resurgence to his career right now in that small ball in Memphis. So he's a guy that I might own him more than any other player tonight.
Yeah, definitely. And then if you want to look at a contrarian play to that, Jeremy Grant for Philly, Nerlens Noel going to be out tonight. Same price as Barnes, right in that 5K range. So if you do want to make a pivot in tournaments, Grant does have some upside. He's been playing pretty well when he does draw starts, and his defensive numbers are great.
Yeah, and he's kind of versatile because you can play him at power forward on FanDuel, small forward, on DraftKings. So definitely a lot you can do with him there. Moving over to power forward, one guy who's going to take on a lot higher ownership than he was going to is going to be LaMarcus Aldridge now that Tim Duncan's been ruled out tonight for rest. We have seen him disappoint the one other time that Duncan did sit. Not a great performance that night, but Aldridge has been the guy who he's been good enough every game, but has had very few of those big-time upside games. But in a game against Washington when the Spurs are pretty big favorites, no Duncan down low now, certainly a guy that you want to put on your radar because he's priced like a guy who's been good but not great.
Yeah, I really like him. He's below 7K on DraftKings at 6,700, and hopefully we can just get a little bit more upside from him. But I think on DK is actually a pretty safe cash game play. Yeah,
and only 7,000 on FanDuel, not a bad price for him there either. Up top at power forward, obviously, popular play is going to be Anthony Davis and Blake Griffin. Concern with Blake Griffin being Greg Monroe, whether he plays or not. Obviously, that makes it a tougher matchup for Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan down low somewhat. But Milwaukee, still a terrible rebounding team, and the real concern being if Greg Monroe doesn't play, I just don't see any way that the Bucks keep this one close. So that would move Blake, for me, from cash game to GPP only, really.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And power forward's pretty top heavy, so if Monroe does sit, you definitely have your options to pivot to.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a couple of cheap guys. John Lure, still 5K on FanDuel, almost 6K on DraftKings, kind of getting a little bit priced out there. Jabari Parker's another guy around that price who he's shown a little bit of upside. He's just kind of that filler guy that you plug in there and you hope he has himself a nice game. But certainly a guy that still has a fairly low floor, though.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like him more so for tournaments. Matchup's not bad, but like you said, I mean, the floor has been pretty low.
Yeah. One guy who's interesting that's been getting a lot of minutes recently, and he's had a low floor, of course, because he's not a big usage guy. 31, 29, 27, and 23 minutes his last four is Frank Kaminsky. Not a guy that you love, but on a 12-game slate, if you want to find a guy that's going to be really low owned, Orlando hasn't exactly been a very tough defensive interior, so he's a guy that, and we saw it in college, he's a guy that can score a ton when he gets it going, but that's not really his role right now. But of course, with Al Jefferson out, he should still be getting upper 20s a minute. So that's, if I'm going super deep sleeper down low, that's going to be my guy.
Yeah, Kaminsky is definitely the tournament option because I think Zeller is still probably the preference if people are looking to, exploit the Charlotte injury without Jeff. But Kaminsky, I mean, I think he does have decent upside for his price, and the matchup's not bad either.
Yeah, and of course we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Draymond Green, who did have a triple-double, barely a triple-double against Phoenix the first time, but I mean, this guy's a triple-double threat every time he goes out. He scored 22 or more actual points in 3 of his last 4 and 4 of his last 7. So Draymond Green, price starting to get up there, but I mean, this guy does have monster upside, as we saw against Boston. If this game stays close late, Phoenix is not a good defensive team really on any part of the court. So definitely a guy that I'll get myself some exposure to here too.
Yeah, I really love Draymond Green, and you got to look at this total and just want to get your pieces. And I mean, he only shot the ball 4 times in that Suns game and scored over 50 DK points.
He's just unbelievable. He's so good. So absolutely love him. Moving to center here, we already kind of talked about the injuries. Of course, Rudy Gobert still out. Al Jefferson may be healthy, but if he's active for tonight, has to deal with his suspension now. Then the other guys, Gregory Monroe, of course, if he plays, he's a fine guy to throw in. Everyone hates him after last night. Gregory Monroe, you ruined my life, all these tweets and everything. But really, it was Jason Kidd that didn't tell anybody that he had banged himself up. So if he plays tonight, the ultimate recency bias play, as everyone's written him off forever since 24 hours ago. But definitely a guy that I'll be throwing in there. But you got some other interesting options. If he does play, gotta like DeAndre Jordan against that interior team that doesn't defend or doesn't rebound the ball well. But I really like Jahlil Okafor still because he's a guy that's been playing minutes even in a blowout. And Atlanta and Philly, the 2 worst rebounding teams in the entire NBA, by 1/10 of a rebound per game. So I'll make my bold prediction that Philly gets out of the cellar tonight by out rebounding Atlanta. I'm calling it right now.
Hey, no, I could see that. I mean, Okafor's been really on a tear lately. You look at the last couple of games, 22, 23, 22, 22 real points, and going up against, matchups even worse than this one, or even better than this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's going to be it's another Atlanta team, kind of like Memphis, who has just not been a great defense this year, which is completely opposite of what had been in the past. And then one guy I know that you like quite often, hasn't been quite as good recently, but he's still a threat for double-double at any time. Zaza Pachulia against the Pacers, who, another one of those teams, not a great defensive interior, good defensive team overall, but down low, not a whole lot of big bodies to stop Zaza.
No, I mean, Indy's been one of the worst rebounding teams, and especially against centers where they're allowing the most per game. I mean, that's kind of what Zaza does. I mean, he's not a great scorer, but if he hovers around that 10 and 15 mark, which is kind of his upside, you'd be happy with that for his price.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one more guy to mention here, unless you've got anybody else. I know you're on this guy too, though. Joakim Noah, right around 5K. Still, guy's not playing huge minutes. Does have 2 30-plus minute games in his last 7, but playing low 20s. In his last game, 5, 15, and 8 with 2 blocks and a steal in 22 minutes against Philly. Obviously, that's Philly, and that's not Memphis, who is playing tonight. But like we said, Memphis still not a great defensive team. Going to see a lot of time against the second unit, which is not a great second unit at all. Joakim Noah, maybe I love him more than I should, but I mean, he's had 24 or more DraftKings points, and I believe it's 7 straight games now. So he's certainly a guy that I'm throwing in there as my favorite cheap center.
Yep, yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I mean, Noah's just a great guy, peripheral-wise, and, he doesn't score, but he just racks up fantasy points, and I can't get away from him if he's going to be priced like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other centers you like before we get out of here?
Kelly Olynyk. Just kidding.
Just kidding. He does have upsides. I'll give you that, and he's had that. But I mean, it's so hard to see when these upside games are going to come. 9-11 fantasy points his last 2 games, but 47 against Golden State in that overtime game. So Detroit does have size down low, but yeah, I don't know. It'll be not a guy that I'm going out of my way to play. But if I make a lineup that just fits, you never know. Maybe you'll see him and that stupid haircut in one of my lineups.
If you take it down, I definitely deserve a cut of that price. I mean, I did say Olnick, right? So
done. I'll send you, if I win $100,000, I'll send you whatever his salary was. How about that?
Okay.
Not his actual real life salary. His salary on DraftKings.
4,500. Lock it in.
Yeah, 4,500. So if you see a big PayPal transaction from me tomorrow morning, you know what happened. Either way, that'll wrap things up here for us for today. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out all the rest of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.